This is my putting it all together presentation. I use Google Slides along with Screencast-O-Matic in order to create my presentation. To begin, I'll discuss my philosophy a little bit. The first thing in regards to my philosophy that I realize is important in an online environment is building a community of online learners. And it was one of the first things I read from Rice. It was about transactional distance, which is the problems that get associated when there's physical distance between students and teachers. It can lead to confusion. It can lead to a lack of a motivation. And to get through that, I'm going to try to build connectedness through the social presence model, which was described by Dickers, Whiteside, and Lewis, just to have that framework where there's an increase in social presence and connectedness among myself and the students for more enriching educational experience. And I want to create that. I want to find ways to create that in my classroom, both on a social level and more importantly, I think, on an academic level where they can grow as learners. Another aspect of my philosophy is that I want to create a learner-centered approach to the classroom. And according to Rice, the teacher, not the facilitator in this approach, provides the structure and guidance that allows learners to create and participate in a network of learning. And also to make sure there's active participation and they do that. But I just love this chart I found in the book. It was figure 2.1 in chapter 2. Over here is the traditional classroom. And over here is an online classroom where the teacher is at the center of everything. But that kind of third point here is where there really is this kind of web of discovery, where teachers within the or students within the course are learning and interacting with each other. They're starting to interact with resources, material, or people outside of the course to really create a network of learning. And I think that really is a real possibility in a 21st century classroom where students have the technology to connect and learn from people besides me. And I think putting them at the forefront of the class will really help them do that. Moving along with that, I want to make sure they have authentic learning experiences. And I base this on the Innicol Standard H. The teacher develops and delivers assessments, projects, and assignments that meet standard-based learning goals and assessing learning progress by measuring student achievement of those learning goals. As a teacher, I need to make sure they're meeting the goals I set. However, I want to make sure I do that in a 21st century way. Now, I want to make sure they are creating something real. And Rice said something along the lines of acquisition of knowledge and skills and using web-based tool by learners can make online environments particularly effective in facilitating developing of assignments and projects that can be disseminated to audiences outside the classroom. I want my students to be able to create things in my class that are real, that are beyond a test, because I think that's what really leaves students with a deeper understanding of the goals that they were meant to learn and the things that they will take with them as they continue on in their lives. As the teacher, I think my role falls into a few separate categories. I really think going back to the idea of building that social presence model, I need to be a group process facilitator. Now, Rice states that that is someone responsible for facilitating all the process directed in creating and maintaining functional and effective group efforts to support community. Now, in that role, I want to make sure that students understand that they are in a learning community. I give them ample opportunities to discuss with each other, to share, to see each other, to hear their voices, so that they really know that they're in a community that cares about what they're learning about, and they're in a community that will help each other to build upon the concepts we're discussing in class, so that they have a better understanding not only of the literature, but how they can use it to make something or how they can use it to apply to their lives. And I think if I put them in groups correctly and I facilitate their work, I'll be able to do that. Now, the other thing I want to be able to do as a teacher is have clear goals and course guidelines, along with quick and accurate feedback. Now, I developed that role through the Innicol Standard D, which states that teachers need to promote student success through clear expectations, prompt responses, and regular feedback. Students need to know, what I expect of them and how they're expected to do it and how they are meeting that. And I think the only way that I can offer that is through clear communication, clear expectations, clear guidance. I'll go into a little bit more about that later. And then as an instructor, I want to make sure that I'm delivering them content that's going to give them the tools in order to build something new, in order to have a new idea, in order to create meaning out of the work that they're doing, whether that's reading, writing, or creating something new. And I think that's going to be my biggest challenge here is as the instructor in an online environment, how do I change my notion of teaching from being at the center of the class, delivering information, to delivering just enough information so that they can go out and do something or make something or collaborate in order to become a little bit better at being a person, for lack of a better. So the unit I'll discuss takes place in a blended course environment. So it would be a class that meets face-to-face every other day. On the off day, there would be an online learning component. And I thought this would be the best way to incorporate online learning because, quite honestly, it's the most real way to me at this point because I still teach in traditional classroom. Now, the unit that I would be adapting here is the research paper unit. The original assignment is for students to pick an American from history and be able to research that American in order to write a thesis statement and then develop that thesis into a research paper that argues why that American has been influential on American society, culture, or some other aspect of our history. Now, the way I would do that is I would flip some asynchronous lessons based on researching and writing techniques. For example, I might give a video explaining what good evidence looks like to support a thesis, and then show a demonstration of creating something like the internal citations and a note card. And that would be followed by a day of research in the library where students can work, I can answer questions, and they're really at the forefront of trying to find the information that they'll need in order to create what they're going to at the end. Another example might be demonstrating writing techniques followed by the writing workshop the following day in class. So that might look like me giving a presentation online through a Screencast-O-Matic, through a YouTube video of what a good thesis statement looks like, what a bad thesis statement looks like, what you should avoid when you're writing a thesis statement, so that when they come to class, they're able to write that. They're able to take that, what they've experienced in the online setting, and apply it to a skill we do in the actual classroom. And then there would also be an adaptation in the end assignment. So the original assignment ends with a report that uses a substantial thesis statement supported by accurate research and well-written explanation. It's essentially your standard research paper. I think it's a great assignment. However, I think I would like to add a Web 2.0 element to it, where students would not only write the paper, they would also create something, a digital evidence of their understanding to show how that American was influential. Now that could be something like a website, it could be a podcast, it could be maybe a commercial or a video. I haven't put too much thought into that, but that would be the secondary element, and that element would have a bit of choice. It would have a creative element to it, and it would be authentic in the sense that they would be creating something that would be used outside of maybe an academic setting. Some of the synchronous tools, I would use web conferencing tools. Our school actually uses Schoology learning management system. So I would use web conferencing tools for something like a supplemental study session. So let's say the students are about to hand in their first draft of their essay. I would open up a web conferencing tool on Schoology, it's actually called the Big Blue Button, and I would take any questions that students had about their essays, and I would do this on that day we had off. Another example of how I would use a web conferencing tool, I would use this to put students into breakout groups where they could have a real-time discussion about questions related to maybe course literature or reading that we've done that will prime them for the next day when we actually work with the story or we work with the content in a different way. Another synchronous tool I would use would be online office hours. So using a chat-based system, I would make myself available for real-time communications about the course. So if a student missed class the day before, they would know what time I'm available to talk, to take questions. And that would actually, I believe, make it a little bit easier for the communication to go back and forth. So they wouldn't, especially if they're sick or if they miss a day, they wouldn't need to constantly send and then check back in. And I wouldn't need to check back in several times throughout the day, even though I probably would anyway, because like most people, I'm addicted to email and messaging like that. Some asynchronous tools I would use, one would be the Schoology learning management system. I would use that to post all the content material online, the videos, discussion boards, worksheets, the assignments, due dates, things like that. Another would be discussion boards where students could discuss course content, whether that would be literature. Another idea would be to open up a discussion board for questions that students have about assignments, where I could answer or their classmates could answer. The other asynchronous tool I would definitely make use of would be video demonstrations, demonstrating concepts. For example, I created a plot analysis video using the Three Little Pigs, which is not in our curriculum, but it does show students how they would actually analyze plot and break down the plot. Another example would be creating a screencast-o-matic of how to create note cards through Noodle tools so that as students were doing the research paper process, they would be able to access that. Another example of the asynchronous tool, I would use video notes, and that would be give students a place to review notes if they were absent or if they wanted to review, or it could actually replace note-taking in class, which could save valuable time, especially in a blended course environment where the time is already shortened. So another collaborative tool would be, a collaborative tool I would use would be Google Documents, where students could use that to share their research paper drafts in order to review, edit, and revise through peer evaluations and peer reviews. A variation on this would be the Turnitin system, where students have similar access to a revision tool, and they could collaborate on their essays in order to make changes. And I thought that would be a great, student-centered way for them to review, especially as they're getting into the further steps of their research paper process. Some special considerations I know I'd have to make. All of my course content at this point would need to be revised to consider the universal design for learning. I learned this after I looked at a PowerPoint I use as well as a worksheet I use. I do not meet the needs of students, and I don't provide enough means of representation by presenting information and content. I would look for new ways to help students express their understanding in different ways. And I think that's something I should be doing as a traditional classroom teacher as well, but it's definitely a special consideration. And, trying to find ways I can stimulate interest through I can stimulate engagement through interest. Those are all things I'm going to need to consider. Another thing I'm going to is learning about student needs in an online environment. Beyond, the traditional means, I understand how to read an IEP and help a student out in the traditional classroom, but I'm curious, how does that look when a student is in an online learning environment? Same thing with online classroom management. I understand how to deal with a student who may be disruptive during or disengaged during a traditional class. However, in an online classroom, I'm not really sure how to manage that. So that's something I would give special consideration to. Some of the aha moments I had were right from the start, and that really came with that idea that Rice put out, that good teaching is good teaching. And I never realized, at the beginning, I didn't think it would look the same, but when I did my synchronous lesson with some colleagues, I realized that, my lesson, which was about grammar, was a teacher-centered approach to teaching grammar. And it was a good lesson, but it was good teaching in the sense that the traditional classroom. And I realized it's never going to hit every student if I do it that way. And I need to figure out a way to change that. And I realized that, good teaching is going to be good teaching no matter what setting I'm going to be in. I'm just going to need to learn how to adapt to my environment. The real big aha moment came actually this week as I was watching this video, The Flipped Classroom, Overcoming Common Hurdles by John Bergman. It was from Edutopia. He said, it's the idea of chunking your online learning as a teacher. And he said, you can flip a lesson, you can flip a unit, you can flip a whole class. It's scalable. And I really like that idea because I'm going to try to chip away at this thing until I really have an online course that I could throw up, even though I'm still teaching in a traditional setting. And I like that idea of it's scalable because I always use this term, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And that's how I'm going to start my approach. And the last aha I had was the fact that there's so many great resources available online. And, with a quick Google search, I can learn so much from other teachers. And it's one of those things that makes internet so great. And I think it's one of those things that I want to learn to utilize in my online course, in my, traditional course. How do I let students use the resources they have at hand to really find information that will help them? Finally, to wrap up here are my three big questions. What will my brick and mortar school look like in the future? There's a limited chance that jobs will be eliminated by automation, but how will they be enhanced or augmented by technology is a big question I have. How do I eliminate the distractions that might plague online learners? How do I manage behavioral issues? And then the last one is, how do I learn about students when I'll interact with them on a daily basis? And will I fall victim to this transitional distance that I started my presentation with? So thank you very much for paying attention, and that was my wrap up of the course. I Hope you guys enjoyed it.